and welcome to another episode of Hope and Homeschool. I'm Lindsay. If this is your first time watching us, we are a homeschool family of 3. And today we're going to talk about, and this is a question that I get all the time from people who are either new homeschoolers or people who are considering homeschooling, but they're really nervous to get started. And that is, what happens if I don't feel confident or if I don't feel qualified to teach my kids at all, or specifically maybe a certain subject? Like maybe when you were a kid, you were really bad at math, or even as an adult, you're really bad at math and you're like, how am I supposed to homeschool? How am I supposed to teach my kid math? So today I'm going to give you 3 things to keep in mind when you have this question come up, and hopefully that will be helpful to you. So number 1, that is, homeschooling is very different than your traditional school. So don't think of yourself as a teacher. Think of yourself as the lead learner. And I heard this from another homeschool mom a long time ago. I don't even remember who it was, so I can't even give her credit because I don't remember. But she said, you're not the teacher, you're the lead learner. Our goal, at least in our homeschool, is to teach our kids to love learning and to have a lifetime of learning. Because I think a lot of things that keep people stuck as adults is that when school's done, we're done learning. And what the most successful adults that I have seen are people that are continuously learning their entire life. So one of my goals is to teach my kids that they're always going to be learning, and one way that I can do that is by being the lead learner. So since we've started schooling, I've actually learned a lot, and right now our highest grade level that we teach is 2nd grade, and I have learned a ton. Stuff that I know that I learned when I was in elementary school, but I had forgotten. I've learned so much more about history. I've learned so much more about science. I'm even learning, more things about grammar and things like that, math, but we read books together and I learn through that. So keep in mind that it's not about knowing all of the information so that you can teach it. It's about learning together as a family. So number 2, God gave you your children for a reason, and it's because you are the one that is to know them better than anybody else. So if there's anybody that's qualified, that's the most qualified to teach your children and to homeschool them, it is you, because you actually know them. You know their strengths, you know their weaknesses. You're actually going to be the best person to select a curriculum for your child because you actually know your child. I have a child who struggles to sit down with like a worksheet, and she's one of those kids that like will start with problem 1 and skip to problem 10, and like that is totally against like my way of thinking. But I had to learn that she doesn't learn the way that I learn. And so because I know that about her, I can customize her education to fit the way that she is going to learn it best. Also keep in mind, because I think sometimes people say, well, I don't have a degree in education. I don't have a teaching degree. Well, keep in mind that when people are learning in college how to teach, they're learning strategies for teaching an entire classroom of children. Now, I actually don't feel qualified to teach an entire classroom of children because that's a whole nother thing. But I do feel confident in teaching my children in my home. Why? Because I know them, I have authority with them. I don't have to have all of these strategies for teaching an entire room of children. A lot of homeschooling in the beginning is really kind of pulling yourself away from the way that we've been programmed to think about school, because we've been programmed to think that you have to have a degree in order to teach. And we've been programmed to think that you have to know all of this stuff before you can actually teach it. And that's just not true. And part of it is just going to be getting away from that old thought process. And number 3, maybe there's going to be a subject or 2 or 3 that you just don't feel confident teaching. Like maybe you're not good with math and you don't even have a desire to learn math. Number 3 is delegate, delegate, delegate. And some people might disagree with this, but this is what has worked for us, and so I'm going to share it with you. Is I learned right away that I was going to have to delegate some things or this wasn't going to work out. And the more confident I get in my homeschool and in my authority with my kids and in my teaching style, the less I need to delegate. But in the beginning, it was so refreshing to me that I could delegate. And so one thing that you can do is, if you're bad at math, hire somebody to teach math. Or we use a program called Math UC, and I've really been enjoying it so far. At some point, I'm going to do a review about it because we struggled to find math curriculums, and this is the one that seems to be working out best for us. But what I like about it is that it's a DVD that goes through the lesson with your kid before you sit down and do the coursework. So the DVD is actually the one teaching your kid, and I don't have to do it. Another thing that we do is we use classical conversations, and I know some people either love or hate classical conversations, and I am eventually going to do a review video of the whole classical conversations system, and I don't get paid by them in any way. So if you're looking for sort of an unbiased view of classical conversations, stay tuned for that. But we've been utilizing classical conversations because I found in the beginning that I was struggling to come up with a curriculum for history and science and things like that. I just felt like I was drowning and that we were getting farther behind. So I actually started doing classical conversations just so I could delegate something, so that classical conversations could just tell me what to do in certain areas, because I didn't want to have to think about it for a while, and I just wanted to stop feeling like we were drowning in our coursework. And so classical conversations kind of took care of some of our curriculum for us. I didn't have to think about, okay, what are we going to do for history? What are we going to do for science? I just followed that system for a while. Now, as I get farther along in my homeschool experience, I feel more confident that I would be able to come up with my own coursework, but I also like the whole delegation thing. This is one of those questions that so many people have in the beginning, but really, now that I'm a veteran homeschool mom, I'm like, when people say, are you qualified to teach? I don't feel like I'm able to teach without an education in teaching. And I'm just like, it's one of those things. It's like the socialization question that we get, or do you feel like they're going to have social skills? And after you're a veteran homeschooler for a while, you're just like, oh my gosh. You don't even realize. It's like, how is that even something to worry about? Or you realize that something that you used to think was a big deal is so not a big deal, and something that you used to worry about is just you're like, why did I even worry about that? That's the least of my worries at this point. So I hope that was helpful. I know it's super scary in the beginning, and you kind of feel like, number one, society is kind of telling you that you are going to screw up your kid because you don't have a teaching degree, and you kind of even maybe feel like that a little bit on the inside, but you're being pulled in this direction and you really want to homeschool. Here's my advice. Just shut out all of the noise. You've got this. You can do it. Surround yourself with support. Follow channels like this. There's other channels on YouTube that are homeschool moms. Join some homeschool groups on Facebook. Some of them are good, some of them aren't so good. Just surround yourself. Find a community of homeschoolers in your area. The best thing that I ever did was find local homeschool moms, whether they were in our classical conversations group, and some of them weren't. Some of them didn't do classical conversations at all, but just getting wisdom from those moms who had already been through it. And because when I would struggle with something, I would talk to that mom, and most of the time they had also gone through something like that, and they had already walked through it, and they just always made me feel so much better. They gave me a piece of advice that just totally would take the pressure off. And so I just highly, highly recommend plug in with other homeschool families. It doesn't mean you have to homeschool the way that they homeschool. Just because you listen to me does not mean you have to homeschool the way I homeschool. Nobody is going to homeschool the same way, but it's important to surround yourself with that community so that you have the support that you need. Because I remember in the beginning, before our family realized that this was actually not going to screw up our kids, before my friends realized that this wasn't actually going to screw up our kids, I needed somebody around me to tell me that I could do this, and that's what you need to do too, is surround yourself with that support. So I hope that this video was helpful. I hope it makes you feel a little bit better, at least maybe gave you some action steps. Keep following our journey. There's going to be a couple new videos every single week. We didn't have a new one last week because we all had the stomach flu at my house. It wasn't pretty. But we're going to have new videos every single week to help you on your homeschool journey. We're going to talk more about how we homeschool so you can get some ideas, pick and choose what's going to work for you in your homeschool. We're going to talk about why we homeschool. So if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. We'd sure appreciate it. If you liked this video, hit that like button, and we will see you next time.